Hello, Jean. Hello, Josh.
Hi.
Everyone good there? Man, it's hard to be a CMO, not just because sometimes technology fails, but it's rough out there. And I think in many cases, we are trying to really preserve and protect what we do every day. We've got more pressure from our investors, especially if you're PE-backed. Our tenure continues to decrease. So it's not always rosy out there, but the ones who are winning are the ones that are looking for ways to really expand the role that they play beyond the CMO. So I'm very excited about the topic that we're going to tackle today because it is about expanding our seat at the executive table. So we're calling it the CMO Plus. And I've got Jean and Josh here who have been able to do that successfully, whether they're taking on new roles or having a greater impact by driving business strategy more broadly, which they will both talk about. So we're going to talk first on going from marketing leader to enterprise leader, and I'd love, Jean, for you to first share your experience. What are you doing beyond the traditional marketing role? How have you expanded your influence? What are you doing?
Well, I feel like whenever I go into a company, and now I'm at CoreWeave, I was the CMO at Juniper Networks, Palo Alto Networks, NetApp, and every time I go in, I don't think anyone knows what marketing does. So it's always this question of like, oh, we need you to help us to get into enterprise accounts, or oh, we need you to help us to tell a better story. Oh, we need to grow, exponentially over the next couple of years. And so I tend to ask a lot of questions and listen as to what's the business need, and then come back with the positioning of, okay, we need to really think about our company differently. I grab hands very, very fast with product and sales. And I'm like, okay, if the CEO has a vision, are we actually delivering the value through our product portfolio, and are we able to sell it and grow revenue? And then I always start with like a carrot of let's tell a brand new story. Yes, I start with the story, but it's not really just the story. It's like redefining like what is the company, and then do we have the actual like value in the products to deliver on it? If we don't, can we tell a story bigger than what we do today? Do we then map it back to a product portfolio and a roadmap that helps us to deliver against that with new solutions? Are we geared up to line up right in hand with sales to be able to tell that story, understand accounts we're going after, segmentation, and deliver that? And every time I've been able to successfully do that in a company, it hasn't been about me taking on a new job. It's about defining what is the value of marketing and like what we're able to do. And so that's been the value that I think I've been able to help with a great team behind me and with me to go do.
Excellent. Okay, but you have taken on partner sales, have you not?
I've had sales in different jobs, I've had SDR in different jobs, and it's been like, marketing plus, but it's also been not as about just taking on other departments myself. It's been about how do I partner so well that it doesn't even matter.
Right. Excellent. Okay, so Josh, tell us a little bit about what you've done in expanding your role. I know that you drove like a whole revenue model across your organization, so if you could share.
Yeah, I love what you said, Jean. I think I'm a serial private equity guy. I've worked with 5 different private equity companies, 4 really good ones, 1 terrible one.
And he's still standing.
Still standing, yeah. And one thing I've learned working with our different portfolio companies is you can tell very quickly which CMOs are going to make it and which ones are effective and which ones aren't by first going to, not the CRO. The CRO is an important constituent for the CMO, but the CFO. The Chief Financial Officer is the one who connects with private equity and the shareholders and others the most. And so if you have not, as a CMO, won your CFO, you're probably in trouble. CFOs don't naturally understand things like attribution models, return on marketing spend. And so if you do not have a good relationship with your CFO, you're in trouble. Earlier, somebody talked about the relationship with the CIO or the CINO, right? That's an important relationship to have as well. And marketing is uniquely positioned because we have there's so much purview within our jobs and what I feel like is our remit within the organization, that if we're not partnering with IT and finance and we haven't agreed on some things, and certainly the CRO, it's table stakes, you're going to get yourself in trouble.
And you, when we had met, talked a little bit about what we're going to, kind of the storyline here. For you, it was largely also a mind shift. And you talked a lot about how you need to show up as a business owner, not just a functional lead over marketing. So, and Jean, you were going down that path as well. It's not always about taking on more. It's thinking differently about how you can have an impact in other ways without taking on other teams. So I'd love to really kind of double click on the mind shift that's required to have broader impact and what you focused on. What were those things? So Jean, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, when you're creating a new category, you have to have the whole executive leadership team with you on it, because it's not just the marketing job. I think if it's just a marketing campaign or rethinking how you talk about a portfolio, it is a failure. It takes the buy-in from the CFO for sure. It takes the CEO to be all in, and I think that, if you're able to go across your peers and have the relationships that are required to make the shifts, you can get the buy-in, because it's not just a marketing job. I mean, if you're starting to impact how engineers spend their time and what they're actually doing to build new products, that is not just, marketing providing requirements document. It's actually saying we need a new roadmap. We've got to realign and reassess where we're spending engineering resources and product development, and how do we ensure that lines up with the strategy and story we're going to go tell. They don't always love that. But when you paint the picture to say, if we don't do that, we can't tell the story. I always use the story as like the carrot, but it's like, no, we want to do it. But staying on that and being really close to the business is super important. I do think that too, as you start to make that mind shift and enterprise shift, from just the CMO seat, I tend to see some of the best benchmarks of success is how many times the leadership team comes back and says, wow, we're still telling that story today. I left Juniper Networks almost a year ago. I had the head of sales and head of sales engineering reach out to me just yesterday and say, do you know that we're still telling that story right now? They just got on stage in front of 10,000 employees, and we're now mapping out where we're going with this new category and new story. And I was like, well, that's nice to hear. I mean, because it means it's having lasting change and impact. It wasn't just a one-time thing or a couple of quarters or a year. It was a multi-year impact.
Excellent. Josh.
Yeah, I often tell CMOs, and this was a tough switch for me. I actually think the hardest transition for any marketer, it's not going from frontline, marketer to manager, or manager to director, or director to VP. It's actually going from VP to that C level. Because CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, you have to start with the end. You're an officer of the company first. And any marketer coming up through that marketing chain, their job is to be a marketer. I spend more than 50% of my time on the problems of the business, whether it's churn, M&A, AI, not within marketing, but how do we use it within the organization and governance. And there are just a lot of CMOs who don't understand how to read financials, don't understand what EBITDA is properly. It really is a big step going from that head of marketing, where you're often, you have an ego for your team, you're defending your team, you're doing what the CRO at Snowflake said, you're pointing at the scoreboard, to moving into that officer of the business first and having kind of an ego for the organization, the health of the organization, the growth of the organization first.
Yeah, leave the egos out the door.
Yeah.
I love the focus on finance and your fluency in finance, because I think that I know that I didn't get coached on that as well as I could until I reported to one CEO, and she was the one that taught me, hat off at the door. When you show up to this table, you really need to understand the business and think about it that way. And ever since then, all of my aspiring CMOs, that's one of the areas that I've always told them to focus on. Really understand the numbers and how you're going to impact. If you cannot read all of the financial statements and what they mean and how you can impact, you're not going to grow and you're not going to get the role. And if you do, you're not going to be very successful. So it kind of ties back also to your relationship with the CFO. So we also know that sometimes when you veer out of your lane, you may work for an organization where people are very territorial. Have you ever encountered that as you're looking to kind of expand your impact in changing lanes, crossing over, whatever it might be? Were there ever moments of friction that came about from that, and how did you manage that change? Because some people get a little prickly when it comes to things that they own, and leave me alone.
I think it was the finger pointing of, we're not getting the quality leads. You know, we're not able to grow because marketing is not delivering the impact that's needed. And I think the first thing that I did at one company was with the sales leader and I were really close. We had a great partnership. And we took ourselves, like, you know, taking off our hats and, like, looked above and looked at, like, what is the actual problem instead of, like, whose department or whose job is not working well right now. And then really diagnosing where were the flaws in the systems and processes, how do we get specificity on roles and people, how do we align to one common data set so we weren't pointing fingers at different numbers. The financial side was huge, like really getting down to exactly what were the goals and what were the KPIs we were going to measure against. How do we look at that at every single stage? We stopped talking about funnels as a marketing funnel and a sales funnel and started aligning to one funnel. And then looking at what is the one KPI we're going to measure against where we can say definitively this is success. And by doing that, it took down the silos of the teams pointing the fingers. It allowed for us to align at the top and never be apart, and allow for our teams to start solving the real problems.
Great, thank you. Josh?
Yeah, I have. I found there are little things that I've done in the past, like, I used to have a marketing operations team, but it was so insular and, kind of creating my own fiefdom, right, with marketing ops. They just reported to me, had accountability to me. I created a revenue operations team, which I call Switzerland, right? You get the age-old marketing and sales conflict, and you've got to have one central team that is objective, and they use data, not feelings. They don't have fealty to sales or marketing, and they become an adequate truth teller amongst the two organizations. So I think little tweaks like that, where you're learning to build a relationship fundamentally and within the structure of the organization, goes a long way.
Okay, you have 40 seconds to answer this question, and it's a big one. Let's talk about the boardroom. What does it take for a CMO to be successful in earning and keeping a seat at the board table? Ready, Jean, go.
Facts. Repeatable facts, trending facts, being able to show analysis over time, being able to pinpoint exact KPIs, being able to represent the company as a whole in terms of shifts in behavior and as in growth in the business.
Don't ever talk about leads. Don't ever talk about impressions. Don't talk about activity. Talk about outcomes, right? And that's sales qualified pipeline, sales qualified opportunities. I found there's two game changers for me. I stay uber connected with our operating partners. Private equity oftentimes has operating partners. They want to partner. They want to understand attribution models, and they want to come to an agreement on what attribution looks like. That's been helpful. And then on a number of occasions, I've been able to talk my CEO into letting me recruit one marketing independent board director, right? And so in my organizations, I've always had great either previous CMOs or revenue leaders who understand attribution, and when I'm not in the room, they can fight those battles for me. They know the language of marketing and the business, and so that's been very helpful.
One little more point, if you can get access to board members, a lot of times they have really good advice. So if you're able to establish some relationships with the board members, that also really helps.
Well, and as one operations leader told me, they're there to help support and help you tackle the thorny issues. So if you can get access to them, you need to do that. All right. Thank you both so much. Josh cannot wait to read your book. So everyone has a copy of that, and we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.